you know, part of our life is empathy. Part of empathy is understanding what other people are going through. Part of understanding what people are going through is to put yourself in their shoes and look at the world the way they see it. And that's why when you write a comic, it can't all be your voice, right? It has to be the character's voice.
Yes.
Uh, Somebody said when I wrote Uncle Sam, they're like, Sam's politics and this and that. So that's your politics? I'm like, no, that's Sam's politics. That's Phantom Lady's idea. That's not that's Phantom Lady, the way she sees it. You have to disconnect. Otherwise, everyone's going to have your brain, and that's not
Yeah.
good, right? As a writer. So when you work with a partner, it's easier to pick on and, I'll go to Justin or he'll go to me. Would Jonah really say that, or would he just stay quiet and let the guy talk himself into, screwing himself over? And I'm like, that's a good point. He would just sit there and look at the guy and make him more nervous, so he would keep talking more. We do that kind of thing. We see it like it's happening in front of us.
Right.
And we see how, yeah, with Jonah Hex is like whatever dialogue we write, we would cut it in half because he doesn't talk that much. He's not interested in what other people think so much, unless it's Tallulah Black. Same thing with Harley. Harley would, when she's nervous, she talks more.
Yes.
And then when she's emotional, she talks less, and her body language is different. She's not bold but she's slouched, or so we see them as real people, and like real people, we know how they're going to react because we're building up who they are, and they don't act anything. Jonah Hex and Harley Quinn, you could not be two further characters from each other. Same thing with Power Girl and let's say Daredevil, Matt Murdock. They're completely different. So you have to see the world through their eyes, and that's part of writing, is to get your story down, but then slow down and say, okay, I'm a guy who's blind, but I can see that I'm a person that really hates people, but I'm a bounty hunter and I got to make money.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to deal with this idiot right now, but I don't have to love him. So how do I get that across to him without saying too much, Or if I'm Jonah Hex, I'm like, I like this person, but I don't want them to know I like them so much because I'm also sick of them at the same time. So when you write your dialogue, you have to sit there and you go, okay, like, what is the best way to say that and yet keep the story moving, right? Because you need to move the story. We only have 22 pages or 20 pages. I need to move a story real quickly. So what's the best way of expressing this without overstating it? And yeah, man, that's the beauty of editing, is we
Okay.
keep editing our stuff.
Okay. That's the beauty of editing. This is something that I was really looking forward to hear, because by the end of the day, you were making your mark as an editor when you were part of Marvel Knights. But now, I mean, if there is something consistent about your career, it's the editing part. Okay. Are you doing the same thing here when it comes to your paper films project? Because you've created Ash, Painkiller Jane, Queen Crab, Phantasima. Forgive me for pronouncing it.
Yeah, Fantasima. We call it Fantasima, but yeah.
Yeah. So, and then you have the Resistance, and I mean, like, it's one thing to. You've mentioned Justin Gray, you've mentioned Amanda Connor, you've mentioned so many of your peers who have worked with you on these projects. But are you still having your editor hat on when you are part of paper film?
I do, but I definitely, as a lot of people tell me, your comics take a while to read. They tell me once in a while.
Okay.
And I always laugh because I always say, you know what? When I was a kid and I bought a comic, I wanted to read it for an hour. I didn't want to read it for 5 minutes, And I said, I wanted a full story. I don't think that's ever left my body. Like, I love chatty comics. I love dialogue. I want more information. I do edit my stuff, like my own scripts. When I drive my letterer crazy, but I pay him extra because he'll letter the book. I'll hand in the finished script. He'll letter it. And then I'll go back and go, you know what? Let's cut that out and let's cut that out. And he has to redo it, but I always pay him because I keep trimming it a little more, a little more, a little more. Sometimes I look at the art and I'm like, well, actually with Gunslinger, which is Deadly Tales of the Gunslinger I do for Todd McFarlane right now, I drive the editor crazy. I know I drive the editor crazy. But a lot of times, once the art is matched up with the lettering, I'm like, the art is telling the story. I don't need that word balloon, so I take it out. I'm like, can you take that out? Or the art's not telling the story clearly, and I'm like, I need to add a caption there because the reader's going to get lost. If I don't say it, they're going to get lost there. So editing is really important. When I edit other people, I tend to kind of be a light-handed thing unless the story's not making sense. Then I say, hey, you know what? This is great, but I have no idea what this means. Can you give me a little more clarity in it? Again, I'm trying to create books that everybody can read, and I don't want to make readers feel like they're alienated from anything, meaning when they read it and they don't get it or they get lost. I feel like that's the worst thing you can do for a reader is you're sitting there going, I don't understand. Who's this guy? Why is that guy there? So there is a continuity and there is a flow to a comic that nothing else has. It's not a film where the music is going to tell you to be scared or something's coming. We have the drawing and the art and then sometimes a caption to describe something. So within that medium, clarity is extremely important.
Okay. Now you mentioned the Kickstarter bit, with which you have been involved for quite some time. You have used a great deal of independent work, and you just shed light on the fact that, like, for example, it cuts the publisher out and grants a great deal of independence to the creator.
Yes.
Now, for the aspiring comic book talent that wants to tell their stories visually as well as in writing in Saudi Arabia and the GCC, can you
Yes.
just like elaborate a little bit that why is creator owned work important for a professional such as yourself? Okay,
Okay.
because you don't have any shortage when it comes to recognition. You're getting invited to the premieres. You are very much well known within the big two, but still, you I mean, when we follow you on X, when we follow you on your social media, there is a lot going on when it comes to independent projects that are there on Kickstarter. So,
Right.
can you just elaborate that why is creator owned work
Sure.
important?
Okay, so it's really fun to work at DC and Marvel on characters that I grew up with. It's a blast. It pays bills. They pay better than anybody, but I don't benefit that much from it. So they'll sell the comics. I get paid. Sometimes I see royalties on it, not always. Even things like Marvel Nights and making all these movies, we get invited to them. Once in a while, they'll throw us a couple of bucks, but nothing substantial, nothing I can live off of. So comic book creators are the lowest end of the totem pole of entertainment,
Right.
especially writers. Okay, because we can't sell our artwork. We don't have any, right? So it's great working for companies, but as a creator, I want to leave a legacy of things that I created. It's great to work on Batman, but without me, there's no Painkiller Jane, there's no Ash, there's no Fantasima. Now, it doesn't matter so much that they're not big creations. The thing is, it's still mine. And with that, I can control what happens with them and I can control their future. And then when I'm dead, whoever I leave them to, they can go run with them. But I want to leave my net something. If I'm in this field for years, I want to be able to say, hey, I also created that. And again, we don't benefit when I worked on Harley, right?
Right.
There were billions of dollars in licenses with that.
Yeah.
You shirts and hats and costumes and keychains and toys and every kind of thing you can imagine. Amanda has them all now. And they would send us like on the dollar what they made. We would make like 1/100th of a penny on it, next to nothing. They would send us a check once in a while, a couple of bucks here and there. But if I told you broke it down for you, you'd be like, that's horrible. You guys should be rich from this. That's not the case, right? So you learn that. And so you learn that, well, you know what? I do Painkiller Jane and I sell a license for a toy. I got paid 500 times more
True.
than I made off of another company. And it's not even that much, but it's so much more. So there's a part of being a creator where you want to own your characters and you want to have a life outside of being a DC and Marvel guy. I love the creators that work for DC and Marvel, but I wish we saw more original characters from George Perez. I wish Darwin Cook had more of his own characters. I wish Joe Kubert, and Joe Kubert did his own work, right? He did his own books, but I wanted more. I wish I saw more, even though Joe Kubert and Will Eisner are probably the greatest examples of guys that did their own books and created their own stuff. But I would love to see more of this by creators. What's really, what really they want to do, what they see as a thing. And again, I understand the fans want to see us on Daredevil and they want to see us on Harley and I get it. But I think it's important to create your own things. And there's no such thing as a failure at create your own. Even if the book never sells, you still did it. There's no such thing as having a failure. Because look, I've done 25 Kickstarters. Not every one of them did really well. But like, I'll give you an instance, like Pop Kill was a Kickstarter we did.
Right.
Now Man Cave is putting the books out. The first issue sold 55,000 copies. That's huge for
God,
an indie
in his
for an
day and
indie
age.
comic. Yeah. And so it has a second life. Like this book has a second life, and it's all mine, Dave and Juan. We did that ourselves, right?
Right.
So there's a real pride that comes with something you created and people like that you're never going to get from the Supermans and the Harleys and the Batmans. Believe me, I love that people love what I do so much. But for me personally, itch that I have to scratch is doing my own characters.
So
And
if
I could do both at the same time.
so if I just like try to summarize it in minimum words possible, it's basically the privilege of ownership, independence, and then at the same time, if it succeeds, you tend to benefit instead of
Yes.
the middlemen that are there.
Yeah, we're talking the difference between $1 and hundreds of dollars.
Right.
You know, look, if if you're a fan of the comic creators, you have a bunch of guys and girls you like, right? You're a fan of a certain amount of comic characters,
Right.
people, right? Creators. You really want them to be successful. So they can keep creating more. And if they're not doing well in comics, they go away. They go to other jobs. We lose the guys like Joe Madureira, all these different guys. They make more money doing games or they make money doing other stuff, and you don't see them doing comics anymore. It's because the comics aren't paying enough. They have kids and they say, you know what? I need to feed my family. I'm just not making enough doing Superman every month. I'm just not making it, you know? So that's why I always say it's important to support creator owned, because usually that means your creator is taking a risk because they're not always successful. You know that. We see them every month. They're not always successful. So it's why I buy comics from every creator-owned guy. Every guy and girl that comes out with their own stuff, I always buy it because I figure I want them to keep drawing. I want them to have some success. And a lot of times they're more fun. The comics are just crazy. They're just, some of the ideas is so out there, but that's the fun of it, right? That's the fun of comics. You can do anything.
Yeah.
It is a medium. It is a medium not limited by budget.
Okay.
You know?
Touched upon a lot of harsh realities on which I want to ask you a few questions. But
Sure.
before we do that, I want you to share a special message about your ongoing or upcoming Kickstarter, which your fans in the Arab world need to know about.
Well, I'll tell you because the next one, I'm fulfilling the one we just did. The Painkiller Jane one just ended. So I have another one coming up, but I would rather your fans go to paperfilms.com. That's my website. When you go on the website, a pop-up comes up to put your email and you get subscribed. I don't do a ton of emails. You get like 2 a month, maybe, right? That to me is most important because that's me connecting with you guys and saying, hey, here's what I got coming up, or here's where I'm going to be the next time I'm overseas. This is where I'm going to be if you guys want to come say hi, or here's my next project and here's some preview art, or even, hey, look, today it's 30% off everything on the website. If you want to go buy something, right? You go buy something. For me, that's the most important thing because that's the center of my universe. I put everything on that website.
Right.
So when I get subscribers, it really helps me out, right? It creates an audience for me that I can connect with directly. And I don't have to depend on sites like X or Instagram or all that stuff. I'd rather connect with the fans directly. I'd rather be able to email the people that buy my work directly and say, hey, look, this is some cool stuff I got coming up, or here's some artwork I could show up. And that's where paperfilms.com really is good for me. Sort of like your Patreon, right? They support your Patreon. They listen to your videos. They're supporting you to keep doing things like this. Extremely important for you to continue doing it. Otherwise, you can't. And we don't want to lose the creative people in this world. We want to support the creative. Supporting the arts is one of the main things in my life.